Hello. This is take two. My wife walked in while I was recording, and I had to do it over because, again, I don't have any interest in editing these videos. Um, I did tell her, I said, don't come in, I'm going to be recording. And she came in anyways in her pajamas. Just like, oh my gosh. I quite literally told you not to come in. Um, it wasn't anything bad. I was just like, oh my gosh. But, it was only, I looked at the time, it took me about 15 minutes to do what I did. So this will probably move actually even faster because I have already a good understanding of what I was talking about. So anyway, um, I'm going to be talking about the idea around arrogance and ego, insecurities, feelings of inability, these types of things. It's a fascinating topic. I've kind of seen it tossed around a few times in comment sections. I wonder what we can kind of learn from this because I think on the surface, we'll start with like ego and arrogance. It makes a lot of sense to kind of not like it, right? This idea of somebody who has a lot of self importance. I think that makes a lot of sense to kind of be turned off by this. But I found that there is a benefit to having like bridled arrogance. And there are definitely caveats here. And I'll kind of get to those in a bit. And I think they're pretty obvious, those caveats. I don't think they're anything mysterious. I'm not going to be cracking a code here. But there is something to this idea of self importance that actually is lacking in many artists, including those who absolutely deserve it, not just the people who are starting out. And, a lot of my students and my friends, are aware of this kind of this feeling of overconfidence that I might bestow on myself. I remember my friend would play me in Street Fighter and just dominate me, and I would always make the joke like, "That's only because you've been playing for forever. Just give me a year, and I'll like catch up and beat the crap out of you in this game." And the joke is that I've never done it. I've like never sat down and tried to get good at that game. But in my heart, it's like if I wanted to, though, I would absolutely learn to beat you. That's that arrogance. That's like unjustified confidence. And so every time I see him, we're always now like whenever we're talking about any kind of skill based thing, we always will say something along the lines of like, just give me a year, and we just kind of laugh about it, knowing that it's in regards to my 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 arrogance. And so, but this is fascinating to me because I've been asked from my students a lot actually this question about how do you like not feel bad about the work you do? Like I feel shitty a lot of times. Like I don't like what I do. I feel my art sucks. Like how do you overcome this? And I always tell people this is not an easy question for me specifically to answer. I have an answer that I think is good, but it has to lead from empathy and sympathy because although I have moments where I don't feel good, like for sure, I can have those moments where I don't think that I'm good enough. That's absolutely not what I'm saying, though. I don't ever feel this way. Absolutely, I feel this way from time to time. It's just that my strategy and that feeling that you may get, it doesn't linger long. Like eventually, I like snap out of it and I double down on whatever it is, especially if it's something I care about doing well. That's the catch. Like if I really care about doing it well, then I will double down. And this is the catch. But let's kind of let's break apart that feeling of arrogance for a second that I'm talking about. I think on the surface we all get it. If you're like the kind of person who's like, yo, I'm the best at this, nobody can ever touch me. I don't think that that's too controversial of a thing to kind of be turned off by. But I think the one that really matters, that we are absolutely all in agreement is a bit of a problem. It's the kind of arrogance that belittles others, deliberately belittles people, for instance, or even postures some sort of important self-importance that seems almost unattainable. Like saying to somebody, "Oh, I'm this great artist, but nobody else can do it because I am built different." This I almost 100% disagree with. I feel that I am a great artist. I put a lot of time and effort to try to become a good artist, but I believe everybody else could do it too. In fact, whenever people say to me, like, how do you stop feeling like you can't do good work? Like, how do I overcome these feelings of insecurities? I'm saying just get over them, you know? In my mind, I think this, but I've learned that that's just not that simple. It's definitely more complex than this, 100%. And I think that in that scenario, if somebody's like, look, I'm just this epic artist. Like, people just can't be like this. This is just impossible. I am by far the greatest of all time, and no one will ever touch me. I think this type of attitude um, is just not factually true. Um, Absolutely, there are people that are going to be better than you. Even people like Kim Jong Gi is as humble as he was, and would never claim that he was like the greatest. Was by far one of the greatest. There were people that I followed that I felt were just as good as that guy. Like, I still follow. They're still alive. In fact, there's part of me that is fascinated with this premise of like, hey, this person's pretty good at drawing freehand, starting from scratch, like 360 panoramic imagery. But I guess like the romanticism of Kim Jong Gi was just, viral. Very much so. It should have been. I'm just saying I've seen people that are just as extraordinary, you know? And for the record, I don't think I am one of those people. I do not believe that I am at that level yet. And to me, this is the fascinating thing, right? Because that type of ego and that type of arrogance, I think, is 100% warranted to be critical of and to even scoff at and just be like, psh. But this type of arrogance, in which I think that I can do whatever I put my mind to, that is absolutely arrogant. That is absolutely egotistical. Like, especially if you have no evidence to prove it. When I said, hey, I wanted to be a character concept artist, I was really bad. And I told the story in one of my previous videos about how I would wait in line to get a portfolio review. And as I was waiting in line, I thought that I was going to get a job because I thought my artwork was so great. But when you look at my artwork at the time that was in my hands, it was just like a 3-ring binder with like blue pencil drawing. It was absolutely not portfolio ready. But in my mind, I was like, I'm going to kill it. And I snapped out of it because I saw somebody who went before me with a portfolio that absolutely was that of great skill. And I felt embarrassed that I even thought I was close. And I think that's the difference here, is that self-awareness must come with this unbridled arrogance for it to be actually incredibly effective. And why would I say this? Why would I encourage people to have egos and arrogance? Well, again, I think there's a better way of phrasing this. Is just being more self-valued, like to appreciate that you're an individual that can accomplish great things with good effort. Basically believing in oneself. And I think in that phrasing, it doesn't come off as bad. And it's probably as simple as just calling it being self-believing, you know? But don't get it twisted, because I've had this said to me that I can come off a little bit more like arrogant. And I don't think that's wrong. I actually agree that can absolutely happen. But what I think gives me a pass a lot of time, because I think if you have arrogance, it may seem like that's a bad trait, but I don't know. I think if you have it accompanied with something else, like the pairing, right? And I'm not sure if you guys ever had salt on watermelon before. It sounds crazy, but when you try it, you're like, oh my God, this is great, you know? Or any other kind of weird combination. I think French fries and milkshakes is another one of those examples where people are like, "What?" And then when you do it, you're like, "Oh, this is actually awesome." Um, and the logic behind the good combination of stuff, the idea here is simple: is that if you have arrogance maybe matched up with narcissism, and maybe one comes before the other, I think that is just really hard to deal with. But for anyone who knows me personally, can see that I have like this kind of like unnecessary level of confidence, but it's never malicious. It's usually accompanied by a lot of empathy, a lot of respect for other people's journeys, and the act of service in which I genuinely pursue helping others helps me stand out. But this confidence allows me to try things, to explore things that I should have no right trying or exploring, then discovering new and interesting challenges, and successes and failures. Definitely lots of failures. This approach is absolutely filled with failures, but failures don't scare me because of my confidence. You know, this is an interesting thing that I would tell my friends who would date a lot of times back when I was a young buck giving dating advice. I don't really do it as much anymore. Most of my friends are already with people. um, there would always be this one of my friends who was really nice and then comes to me and be like the whole spiel of like nice guys finish last, And I say to him, yeah, I get it. I get why this feels bad because intuitively, you're nice to this girl. You're giving her a lot of your attention. You're really treating her well. Like she should give you a shot. Like she's really hanging out with you and really, feels happy around you because you're a good guy and you're fun, but for whatever reason romantically it's just off the table. It's not in the cards. And I usually respond to these friends of mine who's like, no, you have to realize that being nice, being friendly is default. You should just be nice even if you had no romantic interest in this person. Maybe the amount of niceness that you're giving this person is probably too much. And sending mixed signals to yourself. But this idea that people owe you something because you're just nice, and like these girls are like, I wish I had a nice guy, it's common stereotype. I think there's more to it. And, then the comment would be like, well, like, she's like dating this jerk off. Like, I don't get why girls date such jerk offs and basically bad guys. And it's this kind of arrogance this kind of unbridled confidence that these guys typically have. That is just generally attractive too, to these young women at the time of when I was in the dating scene. But I learned at this young age that no, it's not really that they're attracted to, like the bad boy, but more really just the confidence. And I had a lot of confidence in myself and my abilities to do many things. But I never, went out of my way to step over any of my other friends or any other dude in the prospects of dating somebody, you know? But I just remember just that confidence, how well that works in the dating scene. And I didn't have to sacrifice being a nice person because I remember this. I remember feeling like, you got to be kind, walk people across the street type vibes, say hello, say please, thank you, these types of things, buying gifts for people, calling people to check in on them. These types of things that I do for my friends and people I loved or love is, I think, what makes me a likable individual, you know? But I also know that like sometimes we're at like dinner and nobody knows what we want to eat or where to go to eat. I'm like, let's just go here. I just make a decision, you know? And people like that. But there's value in yourself if you do that for yourself. If you just make decisions and you just have that confidence, even if you have no evidence and you're likely to be wrong. In fact, especially if you're starting out, you are almost certainly going to be wrong about a lot of different things. But that confidence will absolutely give you opportunities to learn what is not wrong, what is actually good, what will actually help you, what you should actually be learning. This is the value that I find, you know? And again, I think simply saying confidence, having confidence in oneself is fair enough. But there's something fascinating with the idea of just arrogance, because arrogance, again, and ego is this idea that you think you're better than you actually are. Confidence is just more like I am. It's more neutral. It's I am confident about these things because of the things I've learned. So, for instance, I think it's less arrogance now to say that I'm a confident concept artist, especially for like video games and movies, doing robots and stuff. I can say now confidently that I am a competent illustrator because I've done some stuff um, for really popular projects that required illustration. Am I the best at concept art? Am I the best at illustration? Hell no. Because I'm looking at some of the people that I think are actually better than me all the time as a good test of where I need to be. And as a result, my work tends to look and feel a lot better to anyone else who doesn't have my current taste of quality. Or better yet, they don't care about that. They have other things that they measure quality work with, and I'm just, for whatever reason, hitting it for those individuals. And that's great for me as well. But for me personally, I have my own standards that I feel that I am not living up to, and I am constantly chasing to try to get better at. That confidence that transforms your arrogance into confidence, that confidence you get, that earned confidence. I've seen people who have the skills and yet still don't feel confident about what they can do. It's crazy to me. Because now I'm like looking at this person that I know is a master, and they're like, I'm not a master at all. And they are incredibly humbled individuals. But these are the same kinds of people that don't show up online. These are the same kinds of people that I know personally that will complain um, that somebody left a bad comment on their work. Because it can get to them. Even though I personally and others who would know these artists that I'm talking about, keep them nameless just because that's the point. They don't want to be in the limelight. Um, we would be like, what are you talking about? You are a legend. I've said this to some of them to their face. I'm like, you're nuts. Like, you are absolute legend. I have no idea why you're so down on yourself. you know, it truly confuses me. But it happens. So going back to that question now, to try to answer that question, the way that I like to answer it for people about how do you overcome feeling like you suck no matter what you do. How do you become this person who actually is confident or even arrogant? Right? I usually answer this question by just logic. I ask them, what do you want to do? They want to do XYZ. Okay. What can you do to get XYZ? And then they'll go down a list of stuff. And I said, do you realize what that takes? And they say, yes, I have to do this and this and this. I said, okay. So then, you feeling that your work sucks right now, your feelings that you are not capable, that you are not skilled enough, that you suck, is judgment of your current results that you and I both just talked about, can only be improved if you did what we just talked about, XYZ, right? So feeling good about, like doing these sketches or these studies, feeling good about that like feeling good during the process is essentially, it's not that important in the grand scheme of what you're trying to accomplish too. You know? In essence, if you understand you have to practice, you have to paint, you have to draw, you have to do all this stuff, and you recognize that that will take time and effort, and that you sucking now is just a result of your lack of training, all of these things, you feeling bad about your progress and your, starting point and your bad studies and your bad practices, is irrelevant. It's like if you're training to be a great 3-point shooter and the first shot you threw, you missed and said, fuck it, I'll never be a 3-point shooter. That's crazy. I think we can all recognize that. And so usually my strategy isn't to say you should have more confidence. My strategy isn't to say, hey, you should suck it up, kid. My strategy is to point to them after talking with them, walking them through what they think they need to do, walking them through what they believe has to be done, walking them through what they know is to be true, and just using what they've just told me in this new framing of like, it's silly to feel bad because you are bad. That's the point. You're not supposed to just be good. This is our entire critique of AI artists, right? That this is a really valid critique. Anybody who wants to use a tool to make the thing quickly and say, man, you're all cooked because look how easy it was for me to make this thing. Bro, then anybody else in the room can do this too. What are you talking about? This is not going to have value. If anybody else can make a Studio Ghibli filter on their paintings and their pictures, then that filter is going to lose value. Most people recognize that like filters and these cheap tricks, like there's these memes of movies in 100 years where they have like half of like a mobile game ad on one side of the screen, another on the other side, and then the movie's in the middle, because it's making fun of like this distraction culture or attention culture where you can't pay attention without some sort of freaking distraction. Like we all know that that's not gonna last. Like people are gonna get bored with this, So if you recognize that you suck is part of being an expert. Like that is part of it. You need to be bad for quite a bit of time. That is part of it. It is not Okay, let me put it to you this way. It's beautiful. It's like a beautiful, defining, natural test of like people who can overcome these feelings and stick to what they know to be true. It's kind of like just an indirect test that if you can overcome these, then you will be rewarded with great skill. You know? If you can overcome a lot of these insecurities that are, for what it's worth, valid and true and real, they are absolutely viable excuses. But nothing will change the fact of what you told me like you had to do. You had to do all these things. So yeah, you feel bad. Okay. Then do something to make you feel less bad. Maybe change the qualifier. Every study I do doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because a qualifier could be, it has to be perfect. What are you doing? You can't land a backflip until you work up the courage to do all the different steps in between, right? It's just crazy to think that. And when you begin to realize this, then you will overcome these bad feelings. If you don't overcome them, you will learn to manage them. And I say manage because I also don't want to imply that you will just get rid of them. I like I said, I know people who have lifelong anxieties and frustrations with their abilities, even though they are truly an accomplished professional. Truly. It is crazy, but it is true. This is how I answer those kinds of questions, because the reality is, when I feel bad about my work, if I'm like, oh man, this thing that I just made isn't that good, I double down. I say, oh shit, I'm not as good. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to put my head knee deep in all the stuff that needs to be sought after to get me to good. You know? And I've done this for lots of things in my life. I play guitar when I was young. I still can play a bit. And I remember when I first got my guitar, I went and bought every guitar chord book that I could find that was just like little pamphlets, and then just started memorizing chords. And then I just started to play concerts, join bands, start reading up on other bands, looking online, researching, practicing 3 to 4 hours a day with my band. We ended up playing with a band called Seosin, which is now a really incredibly popular emo band, at the height of our success. But the problem was, just like most things, like it's like a band's like a marriage, and if not everybody's down, then not everybody's down. And when I found concept art and found the power of just whatever I put into this, I will get out of it, that was my saving grace. I ended up doing that, as you see now. But what's interesting about this advice, like I said, I give to these people, these students of mine, is that I recognize that they don't need to be like me. Because I know many artists that are incredible, that are nowhere like me in my personality. We have similar interests in games and movies. We can have a friendly conversation, but when it comes down to, we are just still two different people. And I've come to realize this type of advice of just like, hey, knuckles up, suck it up, only works on someone like me. And as a teacher, I have no interest on just helping people like me. I have every interest in helping people who want to just do it. Because although I have this arrogance that I can do whatever I want, draw whatever I want, right? Become this great person, artist, whatever it is. It is bathed in self-awareness. It is bathed in service because I love helping folks. Even with the sense that, oh, I should be able to teach anybody and help anybody. And that is a good thing. If I didn't have self-awareness, if people could tell me how bad I was at something and I could not see that, then yeah, I'd be kind of your stereotypical arrogant prick. I'm almost certain of that, but I'm not. Definitely cocky, you know? And I think that this is a fascinating, fascinating way of thinking about this because I've had students where their greatest challenge was not their art skills, was not their diligence to try to paint. It was none of these things. It was their own self-doubt. This is by far one of the biggest killers I've seen as a teacher in my entire teaching career. And it is one of the hardest things to snap people out of. It is truly deep and rooted in people's hearts. It is incredibly challenging to help people that are in this state of mind. But I try because, again, that arrogance, I think I can get through them. And I will tell you with some confidence that like 80% of the time I do get through them. I don't get them all. There are some people that I can tell that once I stop talking to them, they get back into it and then they get lost in their own self-thought. It just happens. Listen, I'm not a therapist. At the end of the day, I can only do what I can do. If I was able to sit with them every single day, talk with them throughout the day, maybe there's a different conversation here. You know, maybe there's an opportunity here. But that's just not the case. You know, it's just not the case. I can never do that. I just don't have enough time to do that. But yeah, dude, it is crazy. Let me tell you a great story about this self-deprecation that it truly almost sabotaged my students' opportunities and success. So this student joins my class, really insecure about their work. They don't think that they're good enough. They think that their work is just shit. I'm looking at their work. Day one, first assignment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, your work, I think, is even better than mine, dude. Like, it was incredible. And they're like, no, that's no way. Like, you're just saying that. You're just trying to be nice. I was like, nah, dude. Like, this is great. Like, the way I judge greatness is that if I was just roaming on ArtStation or Pinterest and I just saw this, I'd be like losing my shit. I'd be like, this is super cool. And they're like, no, that's crazy. That's crazy. You're crazy. You have no idea what you're talking about. It's like, I have so much to learn. And I was like, listen, man, you definitely have stuff that you could improve upon, but I don't think it's necessary. Like, I think you're already pretty good. And they're like, yeah, I appreciate that. But I mean, is there anything that you think I can improve upon? Like you said, there's some stuff I can improve upon. What do you think those can be? And I was like, look, I want to be very clear. I think you're already pretty good. I think you just got to put your artwork out there. And honestly, if you want a refund, I am happy to give you a refund. um, but they were like, no. Like, I love your work. I've watched a couple of your videos. I really like the way you teach. I think you can help me out. You know? And I said, okay. Maybe your style is too much like Massive Black. Like, it looks a lot like their stuff. And, you know, Massive Black is already Massive Black. But let me just be clear. That's still incredible. Like, that's incredibly good art. And he's like, dude, that's crazy. You say that. I'm like absolutely influenced by Massive Black people. Like, shoot. Like, you're right. I'm just a copycat. Like, let me work on this. And I said, okay, that's your homework. Then work on that. Sure. And he said, great. Second week comes by, no show. This happens from time to time. Students will join the class. It's very rare, but it does happen. And students just stop showing up. You know, it's unfortunate. I usually tell people, even if you have nothing to show up because you paid for the class. So ask questions if at the least. Or if you have work to show that, I will review it. Week 3, shows up and submits some work. I get to his work and I am blown away. Not only did I think this person was already capable of doing work, now I'm dumbfounded. I'm like, this is like some of the best art I've ever seen in my life. Like, this is crazy good. And I don't know what this looks like. Like, I can't point a finger to who this is like. Like, this feels very unique and really well designed and incredibly beautifully illustrated. Like, it was crazy to me. I was like, what in the world? He's like, I took what you said to heart. Like, I didn't show up last class. I watched the recording. It was great. Like, you know, it was nice, but like, I just needed to study. I couldn't go to class. I had to study. And I like, this is like my 100th attempt. Like, oh my God, I still feel like I suck though. And I'm like, bro, like, you should be working in this business already. Like, you were incredible. And he just wasn't convinced. And during that time, a friend of mine who works at Six More Vodka was hiring. And I said, hey, you should apply, man. I think you can get it. And I was like, bro, I don't think I can get a job at Six More Vodka. But you, 100%. I'll be shocked if you can't. And he's like, no way, dude. I'm like miles away from that. I have no ability. I have no chance. And I'm like, bro, you are an idiot. Apply. And he didn't apply. So I applied for him. I took his work that he did for my class. I shared it along with another student. I had another student I also thought we could potentially have a shot. I shared both of their works to my buddy. And my buddy said, bro, who is this kid? This shit is crazy. And I said, I know, right? He's like, okay, have him apply through the proper channels and I'll find his stuff and then we'll put it through and we'll see what's up. And I said, okay, cool. So the next class, week 4, I show up to class and I say, hey, guess what? You should apply. Because I already sent your work to my buddy and he thinks you should apply. And this student of mine couldn't believe it. They were dumbfounded. They're like, there's no way, you're lying to me. And I was like, no, I'm not. Apply right now. That's your homework. Apply right now. As if I would grade people, I would give you an F if you didn't apply right now. And he said, okay. So he applied. I think he ended up doing an art test and he got the job. I like telling this story because it proves a point, which is he, to the very end, fought against me, that he wasn't good enough. I, on the other hand, with this unbridled confidence, would have always thought I was good enough if I felt I was good enough. The comment about me not being good enough for Six More Vodka comes from the fact that I applied to them, I think like a year ago or a year before that class, and I just didn't get in. And I'd still resonate in my mind. I was like, well, maybe I'm just not good enough. And I think about the style and what I was doing. I was like, it's just not what they're doing. I don't match their thing. But it wasn't because I didn't think I could do it. It was just because I realized I just wasn't a good fit. And honestly, that could still be arrogant. I could probably am just not skillful enough. Only one way to find out, right? Keep applying. But my student, when would he feel he was ready? Even when somebody he thought would know more and he respected their opinion was telling them that they're good enough, he still pushed against. And I see this even with students that are starting out and people that are way more skilled than they realize. And it is I call self-sabotaging. A self sabotaging strategy. I think it's okay to have a little confidence in yourself, to give yourself a little bit more self-worth, especially if it's harmless. If you are not hurting, stepping over others, having this kind of complex that you are truly better than every single person else that exists in this planet, that's not healthy and never going to be true. You know? But it is healthy to think that you are good enough for somebody. Somebody out there thinks your work is going to be incredible for their project. But because you're afraid that it isn't, you're not willing to share it with anybody. You know? And there's a lot of you who are listening right now that are probably nodding your heads and thinking, holy shit, am I actually good enough? And the answer to this is, yeah, be arrogant until somebody else tells you you're not. And then prove it. And prove it. You know? And prove to prove. Because now I can tell people that I am a great concept artist. And some of you who are even listening right now might be like, nah, I think so-and-so is better than you. I agree. But I still have opportunities. I still find myself working for people because I tell them that I can do the job. And then I do the job. Sometimes I tell people that I can do this thing and I realize that I am not as skilled as I am, but I have that confidence that I can learn what I need to learn to overcome that lack of knowledge, that ignorance. You know? And I think that when people start to snap out of this mentality of, you know, always being humble, always self-deprecate, like never feel confident with what you can do because it's bad and it's taboo. I mean, if you're stepping over people, talking shit, then sure, maybe you shouldn't feed into that. That seems like a toxic situation there, right? But it's just as toxic to be overly skeptical of your abilities, overly self-deprecating. I absolutely think it is a terrible strategy, and it almost never leads people to success. It always feeds into their insecurities more. So if you were to over-index your talent skills into a certain social tree, being a little bit more confident in your abilities, having that perceived arrogance, you know, accompanied with self-awareness and opportunity to see that you are not as good as you are, posturing is a pretty deadly combo because it allows you to take chances that you would never have taken if you had too much self-awareness or too much self-deprecating and negative feelings about yourself. You know what I mean? If you have too much of that, it can absolutely get in the way. Versus, I could do that and then stand in a line full of people who are way more competent than you with your three ring binder and blue pencil sketches, thinking, oh boy, I'm about to get a job today. Only to find out that you are nowhere near getting a job. And then going back to school and hitting the books and drawing a shit ton until you can be undeniably good and under an hour paint like some sort of weird looking robot bird thingy while talking and trying to help inspire others. The idea of fake it till you make it is like my life story. So, and it's like the fake it part, I get it, but it's like the make it part implies that you don't belong to be there. Maybe there's a better way of thinking about this. Is again, believe that you can do it until you start doing it. You know, nobody told me that I was a professional concept artist is when I got my job at Sony Santa Monica, working amongst people that I knew and believed were professional concept artists. I was working alongside these people, and they treated me like an equal. That I was like, wait a minute, I'm a professional concept artist. You know what I mean? It wasn't until my buddy gave me the confidence to work on the world's music video 2019. He said, hey, my buddies need an art director, help manage their project. This is my first real art directing job. I had like other positions, but it wasn't really like serious. This was serious. This is like a big thing. Video ended up getting like hundreds of millions of views. I painted like over 200 frames in that music video. But after that, after I worked on that, I was like, wait a minute. I think I'm an art director. And so I think that people should recognize that blanket statements of this person might be too egotistical, this person might be too arrogant, this person might be too humble, this person might have too much self-esteem issues. It's all nuanced. And something that can come off one way or another when pulling back and looking at the bigger picture and seeing more of who that person is paints a better picture and typically gives more context to what makes them tick and what makes them work. I am for certain a person who has a lot of vibes of like, yeah, I can do it right now as we speak. I am been working out pretty consistent for about a year and two. Throughout my entire life, I've been working out. I've been working out for almost since I was 16 years old, off and on, from running in cross country, being in football, to just weightlifting overall for like the last decade. But only in the last year and a half have I taken it very seriously. Because I just turned 40 and I just turned 41. And I was when I was in my 40s, I was looking at the world record for deadlifts. I'm built to deadlift. Pretty effective deadlifter. And I looked at the world record and it's somewhere close to like 700 pounds, natural, raw deadlift, meaning no straps, no belts. I think you can wear a belt and sleeves on your knees. I think that's allowed and still considered raw. I think even straps, to be honest. I don't know. And it's around 700 pounds. Within the 40 to 44 age group at around 90 kilograms, so it's close to like 200 pounds. And I was like, shit, I can get a world record. Give me a year. Listen, there is no guarantee I will get this, obviously. But I'm like, yeah, I can do it. And I still feel this way. And perhaps I'll rip some shit and I'll really, okay, it's not in the cards for me. Or maybe by the time I'm 44, about 3 years from now, you'll see me on TV pulling, or on a viral video, pulling 700 pounds as an all natural power lifter, lifting 700 pounds at the age of 44 at a weight class of 90 kilograms or almost 200 pounds. So when that happens, don't be surprised. Right now, I have another journey where I'm like, I'm going to make a video game, and eventually I'm going to make a hit video game. I don't know if it's going to be this one, but one of them will be. And again, that could be true when I'm 70, you know? But it's just this feeling of like, I can do it. That just makes me do it. Makes me try stuff and get better. And gets better and better and better. I think only lately have I tried to tether this emotion. I'm not a young buck anymore. But I can tell you that it has brought me great success in many things. So I don't think that anybody should go out there doing things that are completely unreasonable, or claiming that they can do things that are completely unreasonable. At the very least, believe in yourself, be on your team, because I absolutely am on your team. Okay? I'm your biggest cheerleader. One might say your best cheerleader, the greatest cheerleader of all time. Anyway, I gotta get out of here. Thank you guys for keep watching these videos. It's very fun to do. I'm very happy to do them. It's way better to do them early in the day. I was going to do it early in the morning, but the morning was feeling good. I was feeling pretty productive, so I was knocking out some other work stuff. But yeah, I was like, okay, before lunch, let me knock out a video. But now it's after lunch. I'm gonna go get something to eat, and then maybe see if I can hit the gym. Cheers. See you guys in my next video.